I know, it sucks. We're stuck in our houses. We can't go anywhere. We're taking our lives into our own hands just to go out and get groceries. But you're in luck. I have 5 series that you should be watching on Netflix right now to keep you occupied while we are social distancing. Now this is going to be a 3-part series because there's a lot of great stuff that you can be watching on Netflix right now. The shows that I want to concentrate on here are ones that have multiple seasons, so you get a lot of bang for your buck. You get a lot of episodes to watch, so you won't really run out of stuff to be checking out while you're quarantined or social distancing or whatever. With all that being said, let's get started. Number 1 is Ozark. 3 seasons in and Ozark just gets stronger as it goes along, unlike a lot of shows which tend to get weaker after the first season. This show follows a family who are forced to move to the Ozarks once their father is forced to deal with the cartel on a more intimate level because his partner has wronged them and is murdered. He comes up with the idea that they need to move there in order to launder money. The cartel likes this idea, but once they get there, they have to deal with angry locals, they have to deal with corrupt officials, other criminals who want in on their enterprise or just want to take it over. And on top of all that, they also have family issues, and the FBI is kind of starting to figure out what's going on with what they're doing. And that's just about 10% of season 1 that I've just described. It gets much more layered, much more dense, and much more intriguing as it goes along. This is one of the best shows since Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Number 2 is Sons of Anarchy. Sons of Anarchy is one of my favorite series of all time. It has just the right amount of heart and violence and intrigue, amazing characters that actually evolve over time for the better and for the worse. Sure, like most shows, there are seasons that are weaker than others, but even its weakest season is better than most shows' best seasons. It follows the story of a biker club called the Sons of Anarchy. More pointedly, it follows the son of the founder, Jackson Teller, aka Jax. He's been part of the gang for a long time, doing what they thought was best. Then he finds a book that his father had written that hadn't been published yet, and he figures out they've been going completely in the opposite direction of what his father envisioned for the MC. So the show is basically about him trying to make changes in the club, trying to find a happy medium between what his father wanted, what he and what the club want. It has some of the best characters I've ever seen in a show, especially Gemma, the matriarch of the family and the club, Clay, who is one of the founding members who married her after Jax's father died, Jax himself, and of course his best friend Opie. The cast of villains that they introduce over time is pretty insane, especially given the fact that they're not really villains. They're mostly good guys trying to stop the MC from breaking the law and hurting people. But this is definitely highly recommended, and again, with 7 seasons, you get a lot to watch. Number 3 is Vikings. Vikings was the History Channel's first swing at a historical-based drama, and boy did they ever nail it. This show is still going, and it is one of my favorites of all time because I read a lot of books about the Vikings, about the way that they did things, about the different leaders, and this goes into a lot of the real history and the things that they did over time. Right now there are 6 seasons, and over the span of these 6 seasons you've seen a lot of growth. It's gone through different generations of the family, and again, even though some of it is dramatized for entertainment, a lot of it is true, and that's pretty amazing, especially when you think about how many people have compared it to Game of Thrones with all of the fantasy elements. If you want some pretty great characters, a strong evolution of the story as it goes, and something unique to watch, this is definitely something I recommend. Even if you're not into history or into Viking stuff, I think you'll find something to enjoy with this. It's just got a good story, great combat, great acting, just everything all around that you'd want in a show. Number 4, Mad Men. Mad Men is regarded as one of the greatest shows ever made. Over its 7-season run, you had this massive evolution of the story, of the characters. It really showed how things changed over time in the decades that take place in the show. And not with just things around their office, their ad agency, because the show follows an ad agency, but more pointedly a guy named Don Draper, who is one of the best salesmen that you'll ever see. He's very inspirational. He has great ideas for advertising. Something that I really love about the show is that it weaves in real characters, real things that happen, including ad campaigns that I studied when I was going to school for visual communication. So you have a lot of different elements here that are very complicated, very layered, especially Don Draper's character himself and the characters around him who all do a lot lot of growing. This is definitely a slow burn, and the finale did make some people upset. If you're a woman, I think you'll find it interesting because it shows the evolution of how women were treated in the workplace. If you're a guy, I think you'll dig it because a lot of the characters are just really cool and they get to flex their creative muscles. And this is regarded as a time when men were men and all that kind of stuff, which is both good and bad, and I think it's nice to see how things have changed. I think the show is fantastic. Do I think it's as good as Breaking Bad or The Shield or something like that? Not quite, but it is pretty up there. And number 5 is Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders is one of the best shows that the BBC has ever put out, and that's saying a lot because the BBC has put out some really great stuff. What a lot of people don't realize is this is actually based off of a real gang called the Peaky Blinders who were notorious for the way that they operated in Birmingham. They were involved in gambling, robbery, protection rackets, and much, much more. Stephen Knight, creator of the show, his family, the Shelbys, were actually part of the Peaky Blinders, and he based what he has put in the show on stories that his father would tell him about the gang. Everything is shot beautifully. It has an epic feel. They spend a lot of time on the cinematography and the editing, but the story and the characters themselves are also just as magnificent. A lot of people have said that the show is unrealistic in the way that it fetishizes this gang. You know, you have these immaculately dressed, super good-looking, clean-shaven guys in this part of Birmingham where everything is dirty and filthy, including the people around them. But that was part of the mystique of the Peaky Blinders back in the day. That's how they operated. There are some differences, like the real Peaky Blinders weren't into politics like the Shelbys are, but it also gets a lot of other stuff right, like some of the infighting and things of that nature. If you want something that is Godfather-esque, that is something strong like that, this is the show for you. There are 5 seasons and there's definitely a strong story arc with all the different characters over time. But it's not just the men who were super good looking and interesting and smart. The women of the show also really help carry it along, and they do a lot of the big decision making and a lot of the actions that you wouldn't expect. So if by some chance you haven't seen the show, I don't know anybody who hasn't, this is definitely something that you should check out. So those are 5 series that you should be watching on Netflix that have multiple seasons that will really keep you occupied while you're stuck in the house. Granted, you've probably seen a lot of these already, but that's why I have 2 more of these lists coming for you, and maybe a 4th if you guys like this. All you need to do is let me know in the comment section below, and I'll keep this stuff coming. But the 4th one will probably be filmed from my house because I am not going out in public unless I absolutely have to. That's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.